You know, you never want to think of yourself as the old man yelling at clouds. And in this case, I'm not yelling at clouds. I yell at cams. You camshaft, you give me nothing but trouble. So yesterday we did the video about measuring cam lobes. We're checking for taper and crown on the lifters. And I went through the comments on that video. I'll go through all of the comments. Now, a lot of you guys, let me get this out of the way first. A lot of you guys will ask technical questions in the comments, and you have to understand we get a lot of comments. And you know, you're only looking at today's video, so you're saying, well, there's only 200 comments, 300 comments. But you gotta understand, we have like 13 or 1,400 videos up, and they get comments all the time. So every day there's like 1,000 comments for me to go through. So to actually, you know, it takes time to answer tech questions. It's a little crazy. I won't get anything else done with my day here, but I do see them. So when you do have a tech question, we specifically do a show every Wednesday night, 7 o'clock Central Time. We do a live show, usually lasts a couple of hours. Usually do it with Dr. Art from Dr. Art's Hot Rod Rehab, where that's the purpose we're there for, to answer technical questions. So if you have a tech question, don't put it in the comments. Drop in on a Wednesday night and ask live, and you know, we could serve you much better that way. So I always want to get that out of the way, right? All right. So I'm going through the comments of that video, and I saw enough for me to really take notice and say, you know, I need to do a video about this. Numerous people say, you know, I never had that problem. I built engines 30 years ago, 20 years ago, never had a problem, just stuck them in. I didn't bother breaking in. I never checked anything. I know. I was there 20, 30, 40 years ago building engines, 45 years ago, 46 years. Oh my God, I'm old. I was there. It's the 1980s or even the 1990s. And you're putting together an engine, a regular engine, a hot rod engine, doesn't make any difference. You're putting together an engine. You buy a cam and lifters, you don't even think about it. You just take the cam out, you cover it with some lube, you shove it in the block, you take the lifters, some people like to soak their lifters, right? But you lube up your lifters, you drop them in the bores, done. Break in, what's a break in? Start it up, let it idle fast for a few minutes and then done. You don't even think about this stuff. All right, those days are long gone. They don't exist anymore, okay? We live in an entirely new reality today as far as car parts go. In the old days, let's say 30 years ago and back, when you bought a new car part, you bought a new engine part, you bought a new cam, or you bought, you know, new pistons, or you bought new whatever it was, right? You wouldn't even think to have to check things like lobe taper. Most people didn't even know lobe taper existed because it wasn't an issue, it was a non-issue. The cam manufacturers just automatically ground the taper into the lobe and that was it, okay? You would consider it lift and duration, but lobe taper? Come on, what am I, a nerd? Same thing with the crown on lifters. You know what we used to do with lifters? I don't have a lifter handy. You know what we used to do with lifters? Nowadays, we know it's a given that when you take flat tappets out of an engine, this doesn't apply to rollers, but when you take flat tappets out of an engine, you have to keep it in order so that they go right back to the lobe that they came from, because there's a bond. Back in the old days, we never really even paid attention to where the lifters went. If it was a high-end builder, it was a high-performance engine, yes, everything goes right back where it's supposed to go. But for an average car, we used to take the lifters. Let's say you pull lifters out for whatever reason. When they go back in, you would take a piece of emery cloth, fine emery cloth, and you would rub the lifter, the face of the lifter, in a figure-8 circle, right, a figure-8 pattern on the emery cloth to create a bit of a taper to it, right? And then stick them back in, and we never had a problem. I know there was zinc in the oil, so I'm gonna get to the zinc in a minute. There was zinc in the oil. There were all sorts of reasons why we never had any problems. But nevertheless, these were things we didn't even really think about. We didn't consider. You bought a new part from any manufacturer, there's no question, this thing's good. Throw it in, right? It's new. How could it not be perfect? All right. If you're building engines, if you're getting into this thing today, even if, like, say you were in it 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? And you're dealing with today's reality, or you're new to this, and the old timers tell you, oh, no, just throw it in and don't worry about it. No, we live in an entirely different era as far as quality control goes, as far as parts quality goes. You can't take anything for granted anymore. So, as I said in that last video, we've done easy 30, maybe 40 various camshaft videos over the course of this channel's life, over the last 6 years. Everything from break-in procedures to oils and measuring this and measuring that and degreeing and blah, 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 blah. We've done countless videos on this general topic. But we have to keep going back and redoing them because, you know, those videos get lost, right? So that's why I redid the one about checking out the lobe taper. These things were never thought of back in the day. I never thought about them back in the day. I never had any problems. Today, a whole different story. Since we started this channel, so, okay, 6 years. We're doing this channel for 6 years now, okay? We've built several engines. We've had several major projects, probably a dozen of them or so. I lose track. I lose count. But one of the first things that we did, we bought a 67 Dart GT. We had it around, kicked around the channel for a long time. It was a 273, and when I got this car, it had come with a new white box cam. It was a Summit cam, all right? So I installed it, and I break in oil, and I lubed everything. You know, I eyeballed it. Obviously, I didn't bother checking, because I had never had this problem. I had never had a camshaft problem before. So I put this cam in the engine, and we run it out to the track. Now, so we go through a basic break-in procedure. I run it around the town here a little bit, and then we're going to take it to the track up to Buffalo Valley and make a couple of runs. And on the way there, I start hearing a lifter noise, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. You know, maybe it's got a lazy lifter. As I'm sitting there, you know, signing the release form, now I'm hearing this thing going tick, 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 tick. That's crazy. I'm not going to run this thing. Let me turn it around and go home. So I go home, and as I'm going home, it drops the cylinder. I get back into the shop. I check. I pop the valve covers off. And there's one pusher that's just flopping around. Tear the motor apart, you know, tear everything apart to pull the cam back out. One of the lifters, I don't remember which one it was, had worn through until the hole at the bottom of it was exposed, at which point it could no longer hold oil and support the push rod, right? Wiped out the cam, wiped out the lifter in the space of the time it took, like I said, to break it in real quick, run it around the area, maybe 20 miles, and then run it 30 miles, whatever it is, 40 miles out to the track. That's how long it took to wipe it out. I was shocked. I had never come across this before. Myself, I've seen other people have problems with it, and I had heard about other people having problems with cams, but it never happened to me, so I never really bothered thinking about it. I replaced that cam with one from Hughes, and it had no problems, right? We kept that car around for 4 years. Yeah, just about 4 years. And I don't know, put maybe 25, 30,000 miles on it. Never had a problem with that cam. So I'm like, oh, okay, Hughes makes good cams, right? No. When we first built Bottle Rocket, the very first cam that went in that engine was a Hughes cam. And this was maybe 2 or 3 months after I did the first one in the Dart. Wiped out on break-in. Right? Wiped out during the break-in period. Because by that point now, I'm like paying attention. You know, does it enough zinc in the oil? Am I doing the exact, 20 minutes at 2,500 RPM? Did that. During the break-in period, it wiped out the cam. So now we lost a Summit cam and we lost a Hughes cam. But the camshaft saga didn't end there. We built a roller motor. So now at this point, I'm like, I'm having problems with these flat habit cams. I'm seeing it. Everybody's having problems with these flat habit cams. I'm just going to go roller from now on. So I built one with a Comp Cams hydraulic roller. What do I end up with? I end up with 3 bad lifters. They bleed down. One of them refuses to bleed back up again. Motor had plenty of oil pressure. Everything was functioning just exactly fine. 3 bad, $800 worth of hydraulic roller lifters. Threw them away, right? Junk, absolute junk. Now keep in mind, any parts we use on this channel, right? Anything, I do not take free parts. I'm going to piss off a lot of people on YouTube when I say this, right? But don't ever trust anybody who takes free parts from a manufacturer, okay? Because they cannot give you the truth. They cannot give you the full story. It's that simple, right? They're beholden to whoever is sponsoring them, backing them, advertising with them. So anything we use on this channel, I buy with my own money, or the guy, in this case, Ducky, bought with his own money. We don't take free parts from anybody, so you get the true story here. So yeah, $800 worth of hydraulic comp lifters, done, right? I built a Slant 6 early on, about the same time, about the same era, right? Put it together, right? Everything seems normal. I mean, this is the simplest engine in the world, okay? And again, it's got comp cams. Now, I'm not picking on comp cams, but I just happen to have had a number of bad experiences with comp cams. So, put this thing together. It's normal. This is the kind of thing I could literally do in my sleep, okay? Don't think anything of it. But of course, I check and I go through a break-in period, or want to put it through the break-in period. But I can't get this thing to start. It won't start no matter what I do. It won't start. I'm messing with the ignition timing. I'm going through everything, okay? Can't get it to fire. Finally, after modifying or adjusting the distributor so I go beyond where it's normally, I finally get this thing to light, and it's sluggish and it just sounds like hell. What is going on with this thing? Well, long story short, I take it apart and I start checking things over, and I'm looking and I'm double checking and triple checking, pulling my hair out, trying to figure out what's wrong. What happened? The camshaft was indexed 11 degrees retarded, right? The dowel that locates the cam, the timing gears, it was indexed 11 degrees retarded. So when you put this camshaft in straight up, right? It's a Slant 6. We're going to buy the green things. Just shove it in there and be done with it, right? 11 degrees retarded. What was another one? There was about 3 years ago, we do a 426 Hemi build. So we do a whole engine assembly and all the other stuff, right? So by this point, I had learned to check, right, and test fit things. Right? Because again, back in the day, built countless engines. I don't know how many engines I've built. Never had to go through this stuff. So we're doing this 426 Hemi, right? And I got the cam from comp, paid for, okay? I get the cam, I look it over, I check all the lobes and everything, they're good. I check the lifters there. Oh, the lifters, we used new old stock lifters. These things were like 50-year-old lifters that my friend Andy Hansen, who owned the car, found on eBay, so he bought those. Because there was a rash of bad lifters at that period of time too. Bad materials and not having crown machined into them. So he bought some NOS Mopar lifters. So I said, well, let me just stick this in the car or stick this in the engine and make sure I'll mock everything up before we do the full assembly. Cam goes in, right? First, cam journal, second cam journal. I get to the third is in. I go to put the fourth in. It won't move. It won't go. What the hell is going on here? Something with the cam bearings. I take it back out. Cam bearings look right? Everything looks totally normal there. What's going on? I take the cam, I stick it back in the motor. How could there be like a little burr or something? I take a rubber mallet, I tap it a couple of times, try to give it a spin, because sometimes that happens, right? You get a little burr, you get a little imperfection, and you can just work it through, right? And then clean it up afterwards. Tap it a couple of times, It won't come out now, right? It only went in just a hair, but just a couple of small taps, it won't come out. What is going on with this? I have never encountered anything like this before. Again, look over everything, look at the cam bearings, look at the cam, everything's fine. Finally, I break out the micrometer and I go to the factory service manual and I check the diameter of the journals. The cam journals were 2/1000ths of an inch oversized. What? How is it even remotely possible? It was possible. The cam journals were ground 2/1000ths of an inch oversized. So when you go to put this thing together with stock diameter, stock cam bearings in there, it won't go. Return the cam, get another one, ground to specification. There are other instances. I could go on, but you get the general point. These things, even though I've been building engines and I'm not an engine builder, okay? I'm a hot rodder like you guys. I don't consider myself to be an engine builder. I've known engine builders. Ray Barton was a friend of mine. I've known Scotty Gradagno from PG. I've known great engine builders, okay? I am not an engine builder. I'm a mechanic that puts engines together like you. But I've done so many of them over the course of my life that I have a lot of experience. So if you're watching this and you're a veteran, you did engines way back in the day, and now you're starting to get back into it, and you're watching videos like this for inspiration and ideas and whatnot, right? I'm telling you, this is a new world that we're in. And if you approach things the way we used to traditionally approach things, you are guaranteed failure. I'm telling you, right? That you never know what's going to get you. What part is machined. It's not just cams. It's like, just go through the whole engine. I was watching a video the other day about a Hemi piston that was machined wrong and broke on a dyno, right? It poked through because it was machined backwards, right? So the intake relief is where the exhaust was, and it was cast thinner there, or forged thinner. So it broke through on the dyno. Who ever heard of anything like that? But it happens. If you're an old timer and you're approaching this in today's world, thinking you're going to get away with the stuff that you used to get away with, it ain't going to happen, man. It ain't going to happen. You have to check everything. And if you're a new guy, right, I feel bad for you. I honestly do. Because one of the nice things building engines and hot rods back in the old days is that you could trust the manufacturers. You trusted stuff when it came out of the box. And today you can't trust anything, and you have to spend all of this time and all this aggravation. And you know what? It's still a gamble. It's still a gamble. Like, even though I have now checked this cam 18 ways to Sunday, right? There's still no guarantees. Same thing with the lifters. There's still no guarantees. I don't know about the metallurgy that's in here. I don't know about the heat treat that's in here. Yes, there are ways to check that. I don't typically do that. And I'm going to roll the dice figuring that, okay, all of the measurements are correct, okay? And I know all of my procedures, and I'm going to double check and triple check everything for lifter free fall and stuff like that before I go and assemble it. There is still a possibility. It's a remote possibility at this point, but there's still a possibility that this thing is going to turn to fudge. And when I start the break-in, I know ahead of time that when I adjust the lifters on this, when I adjust the rockers on this, I'm going to adjust them just the lightest contact with zero preload, so that during the break-in period, if I do start to hear a lifter noise, I'll know at that point it's eating itself up to stop, and before I end up filling the engine with metal and I've got to tear the whole thing apart. If I set this thing so there's zero preload, zero lash, okay, so just exactly right, I'll hear it during the break-in period, and I should be able to save myself having to redo the whole thing, and I'll just have to go in and do the cam. A lot of guys in the comments, again, I always go back to the comments, a lot of guys in the comments were like, and I said this myself, okay, I am never building another flat tappet motor. Everything's going to be roller from now on. And you know what? Listen to me. I agree with that sentiment, okay? But you got to understand something. That stuff is expensive. And there's a lot of people, there's far more people, the vast majority, 75% of the people who follow channels like this, who try to build their own stuff, They don't have the money to just throw around like that. The difference between $300 for a cam and lifter setup versus $1,200 for a cam and lifter setup, that's a deal breaker for a lot of people. And I don't want to step on guys who are like, I just don't have the money for this. I don't want to step on them and say, no, you're a fool if you build it for a flat tappet. I'm gonna give you the best practices. I'm going to give you the things to look out for, and hopefully you won't get burned by it. But to just dismiss building engines with flat tappets anymore, it shuts out a big percentage of the people who want to do this but have to steal money from the family budget to do it, right? I got your back, guys. Believe me, I know where you're coming from. So, moral of the story, check everything. Don't listen to the old timers who just blindly say, that's nonsense. It's a different world. One other thing, I said earlier, I was going to mention the zinc. So one of the factors that's always pointed to, and I've pointed to it myself, as far as camshaft failure goes, is the lack of zinc in today's oils. So they removed zinc, the oil companies, the refiners, removed zinc from engine oil back around 2000 or so, because by that point, almost everything being produced was roller lifter. So the purpose of the zinc in the oil is to create a metal-to-metal lubricant, right? Because everything else, bearings and all, is supposed to ride on a cushion of oil, but when you're talking about the interface between a camshaft and a lifter, it's direct metal-to-metal contact. So that's why they put zinc in the oil back in the old days. But I have proven that that's not quite as crucial as most people think. Now, for the break-in period, for the initial break-in period, and we'll go through the break-in period again when we do this engine, right? But we've done several videos on break-in periods. During the break-in period, zinc in the oil is absolutely necessary. A zinc-rich oil, you don't want to overdo it, okay? Because if you overdo it, you won't get proper patterns, okay? But a zinc-rich break-in oil is necessary. No question about it. But afterwards, after the cam and lifters have broken in, after, let's say, 500, 1,000, 1,500 miles, is it really still necessary? And I did a whole video on this, because it opened my eyes. See, sometimes you just don't think until it's obvious and it's in your face. I have several Jeep XJs. I just became an XJ freak. And they all use an AMC-based inline six. That's a flat tappet cam. The AMC, or the Jeep 4-liter, the 4.0, was produced until 2006, okay? And it never had rollers. It was always a hydraulic motor. And nobody ever bothered putting a special oil in those engines, other than the break-in period, right? But right now, as we sit here making this video, there are literally hundreds of thousands of inline Jeep engines, 4.0s and 4.2s. There's hundreds of thousands of these things still out there in traffic every day, and nobody gives any consideration to the type of oil that goes in there. Just whatever's cheap at Walmart, boom, it goes in. Whatever they've got at the quick lube place, boom, it goes in. And none of those engines have lifter problems or wear problems as far as that goes. I've got one of mine has 270 something thousand miles on it. It's never had, other than I'm sure the break-in oil that it was born with, but it's never had any consideration for oil. I've put over 100,000 miles on it myself, and I've never given any thought to it. It just gets whatever's cheap. So the zinc in the oil, yes, it's a factor when you're talking about a brand new cam and lifter combination and you're going to break it in. But after it's all broken in, its value is dubious. Now, generally speaking, with these older engines, I err on the side of caution, and I use diesel engine oil. I use a Chevrotello or a Delvac, because it does have a slight bit of zinc in it, and it's like better safe than sorry. But it's not really necessary, and these Jeep 4-liters prove that. So be that as it may, use your own judgment. It is what it is. So, yes, old man yelling at camshafts, but there's a lot to yell at here. I don't know, I could go on and on and on. Cams are only part of it. Every part, everything that you get today is subject to either bad materials, sloppy machining. There's a lot of things that, back in the old days when the manufacturers would run off, like any part, but we just use cams for example, or lifters, flat toppers. They'd make millions of them at a time, right? So it was a high volume thing and quality control was very important. Now it's just a handful, right? Very small volume. And a lot of this is outsourced. Your camshaft's not necessarily coming from Ohio. It's coming from East Bongo Squeegee or whatever part of the world that they're sourcing this stuff from. Same thing with the materials. It's not good old, Pennsylvania steel. No, it's Bangladesh steel, right? Who the hell knows what's in there? It's a different world, guys. It's a different world. It doesn't mean doom. It just means you've really got to pay attention and really stay on your game. And I hope you got something out of it. And I sincerely hope I saved you some kind of aggravation with all of this. See you tomorrow.